Alright, this is a film to review the project development through today's date, covering some things about the basement, some things about this stair situation, and then various alternatives at the kitchen, all of which will require some decisions on your part. This is where we had been with the stairs at our last meeting when I came up there on a Saturday, and you guys indicated this would be better if this was wider in here, obviously. So I've done what I could based on what kind of space we have in the basement to widen this hall out by shifting these stairs over about 3 more inches from what had been shown. Now when that happens, there are some decisions with regard to this doorway down here, because that was also indicated as too small. It was a cased opening that was about 30 inches clear through here. And widening the hull out, and even if we left the casing on and widened that door out from wall to wall, casing to casing goes wall to wall, you do get 34-inch wide door frame or door opening in there. And we will look at these in camera view a little later. So there are a couple of options. You could leave that a cased opening and accept the extra 4 inches in width. Or if you really wanted that streamlined and open through there, just get rid of that doorway and just make that a passage where this wall continues on smooth around and this one wraps around and down. So that's the first thing you have to decide, is on that hull. Next though is this situation here. I think this is one refinement here, where we still have the piece of furniture here. But this space between here and that piece of furniture has gotten more narrow because these stairs have come over to the right. So I don't know, here's just a few of these, whether we change anything. I'm going to zoom in to look at these. I do not bother changing any of these numbers through here because I was just shifting through them rather quickly, seeing what could be done. This is probably the most preservative of this closet, and whether that comes up and turns back, which is something like this, except that dimension. This is the minimum dimension here. And that's a mimic of what we had talked about on that Saturday, accounting for the stairs moving over. If you wanted a little bit wider in there, or maybe it just comes straight across. I almost favor this for simplicity because this space has now become narrow at 47, so any furniture you put in there, regardless of how deep this is, begins to squeeze you down through here. As soon as you get to 11, 12-inch deep furniture, you've begun to squeeze this below 36, and ideally that's maintained at 36. So that's kind of the one I favor. But if you need a few extra inches in the closet, then you go something, like one of these. You just have to look at the time in the film. I don't know if you can see the file name down here, but one way or another you have to make a reference on what to do out there. In terms of the doorway in the hall, this was the existing after we'd made our little renovations with that 30-inch opening. And we go to the 34-inch opening, cased. Or like this. I thought I would like this more, but I actually prefer this. But you'll have to make a decision on that. So that's 34-inch cased opening, as opposed to this is as wide as the hull, which is around 38. From another angle, from the living room angle, that was the 30-inch opening. There's the 34. And there's the 38. So I don't know, maybe certainly this is as open as it gets. And finally, from this angle, bring it to 34, or not having it. I kind of like it, but let me know on that particular component. Dropping to the basement, I know that this isn't probably exactly what we were talking about. I'm assuming you guys will get with me, Juan, etc., and let me know how exactly you want this put together down here. But in terms of the stairs, because we want that extra space upstairs, instead of having this as a framed wall like what they've begun to build here, on this one here, I'm just going to say they should just apply treated lumber furring, 3/4 inch treated lumber furring to this foundation wall, and then put the drywall right on top of that. And there's not going to be any real electric needed along here. Here, they might want you to get something in here, I don't know. But we'd like to see that wall go down by that 3 inches and end up with something like this instead. Again, I know that I'm not completely informed on exactly how this was to go down here. I thought there was some talk about an angled wall, but I've just put this together as a starting point. I have maintained this as a 36-inch door because there's no other way down into that basement, so I'm going to keep this 36-inch path down and anywhere you might have to bring equipment or so forth. So when I did that, when I put it in this little notch, and this notch is really just to set that fireplace situation off, isolated on its own from the width of this room, and this location here, this, and that location there determined the bedroom wall, which is 9'6" if this 2-foot closet. I wasn't sure if that's going all the way across there or what, but that is where I began. And I wasn't also sure exactly how this stair was going to be. I assumed fairly open at the bottom, and so I modeled this. This is probably not quite right here, and this could probably go back a little bit more, except particularly if that door swings outward, then it can go back as far as the top of this would allow. I'm just showing it here to give an idea. You can see the one upstairs at the top of the stairs as well. I think you can see how this ceiling's been carved out. But then when I talked about how far back to cut this wall, if this door is swinging in, and maybe it's better to swing it out, or any number of other alternatives. But if it's like this, when the 36-inch door is open, kind of like to not have it hanging over that railing. So that was in the basement, and that was what I did to develop that the stairs in the basement. All right, having taken the stairwell over there in the basement to the extent I could at the moment, I moved to the kitchen and tried to review some of the possibilities out there. I know one of the precepts was getting rid of this beam, hopefully flattening this ceiling entirely. And I know in the early part we talked about relocating this wall at least over to here and getting rid of this door and putting it back here. Some of this stuff that's developed leaves this wall here, but it's probably still decent information. So we start by getting rid of the stairs, because we know those are gone for now in this plan. And one of the precepts is widening these two doors, so those get widened. And next, in terms of getting rid of these beams here, so this whole ceiling is flat, that's done something like this, where 9.5 inch LVL is put in here from here, bearing on here. Little short ceiling joists on this side because we're tight on the roof up there above this, and these are the existing ceiling joists that just get suspended from this beam. The rear roof rafters, which are presently coming down on top of that existing beam that's down below the ceiling, those are still bearing on that, what's left of that wall, so those get cut back just like these ones are and come down and bear on a new bearing plate on top of these ceiling joists. So a section through here looking this way is something like this. There's the 9.5 inch LVL, there's the old rafters cut back and sitting on top of a bearing plate, or one way or another sitting on these ceiling joists, and then the ceiling joists will be suspended from here. You can see it looks like there's still plenty of room up in here from the dimensions I took and observations, etc. On this side, they're 2x4s because we are starting to get squeezed for space here. Note this beam B at that end comes over and is sitting somewhere up inside that wall. So whether there's I don't know what kind of members they have through here, but the idea is that that gets buried in the wall and bears on whatever is there or whatever might need to be added there. Once that's done, though, once that beam B is put in here, depending upon what these members are here, and really I know there's a great deal of weight coming down through this beam, but almost all of that, or all of it, is heading back to this bearing point here. So almost surely this column can go completely away. I don't pull it out right away, but I do know that it can go away. And then we end up with this open flat ceiling up here, and this becomes open all through here. So turning to the kitchen itself, if we left this wall in place here, for example, or to start with, leaving this wall where it is, leaving that door alone, not touching any of this stuff here, just flattening that ceiling out, and put cabinetry on both sides of the kitchen, you really don't, I don't know if it was something that was wanted, but you really don't have space for a regular built-in island here. I mean, you could. It would only be 12-inch cabinets, about a 15-inch top. This is kind of minimal kind of clearances for a, for me, for a fixed island. So I don't think that can work, having any kind of an island or built-in island there. A little shifting around, making sure we've got that minimum 40-inch clearance everywhere. And so that's what you end up with, available space for an island, 15 by 51. So I don't think that's doable. I don't show a built-in island that way. But you could use one of these, and I know the clearances are less, but this is a rolling cart here. This is modeled after a commercially available cart. So that might be an option, something like this. And that will just appear and be here and there throughout the film, whether you use something like that or not. But turning our attention to the kitchen itself, several things have happened here. I've put the banks of cabinets on each side, and I realized we haven't expanded the kitchen to the west at all, but we have gotten rid of that stairwell that was here, and so this is what would fit in that space here. I mean, it's really a terrific expansion of the kitchen in terms of, you pick up all this cabinetry space here, and I'm showing a 36-inch range compared to the 30 you've got. This pretty much remains, obviously nothing much more happens there at the moment anyway. Additionally, I wasn't sure what this space was down here and whether or not you want to try to take advantage of that. I'm just, for the purposes of illustration, I'm showing these 12-inch deep full height pantry cabinets, and in this one, because I was thinking you would have a little dinette here at first before we talked on the phone about bar seating, etc. But in this one, I show these full height cabinets either for utility like broom type things or just food. In this one, I show this middle one is actually a little countertop, and maybe that's a little coffee center. Any number of types of things could be done with that wall, or it can just have art or whatever. There's flexibility of what you do on this bank here. I wanted to keep it open, keep any tall cabinets out of this side of the kitchen. For what it's worth, I don't think that refrigerator, I think this is going to be a solid block right up to the surface of the plaster, so I wouldn't count on that refrigerator being able to recess any further than the back of that wall. But leaving the kitchen alone for a moment and looking at all of this open space here, I had thought that that was going to be a little dinette, and this is a bigger table that I was using in a different project, and the dimensions are called out here, and you can see even something that large would fit in there. It's a bit oversized, so maybe something a little more reasonable size goes in there in the event that we don't go to this bar seating, which I'll cover a little later. After our phone conversation, though, when I recognized that you wanted to have, or hoping to get some bar seating in here, and leaving alone what else might happen over in this region, I went back and began working in that direction. This is probably something similar to what you have. I mean, you don't have this on this side, but you do have some sort of countertop here, not this deep, that comes over. These are the clearances. I think this is a little bit too much, so but that, if I leave that wall in place, 2 seats is about as much as I can get on the opposite side of that. So it's pretty clear that that wall will probably have to go. And this is with and without that rolling cart, just to give you some idea of the size of the kitchen, etc., which you can imagine from what you have. And whether or not, 2 bar seats and additional seating would work. In this permutation, I'm pretending as if the table would happen in there. A 48-inch round table with seating for 5 would happen, in which case the bar seating probably goes away. All right, and this is probably a little narrow for all the traffic that's going to be coming through here. We're just trying to solve that at this end with widening this door. So that probably should be broken back a little regardless. I pull it back another 6 inches. And having given up the idea of a real permanent kind of an island, we can wrap this corner here as well, similar to what you have now, except the range is over here. So with seating over here, with regular dinette seating over here, this is about the and leaving this wall and this door, etc., in place. This is about as far as I've taken it. Well, the next possibility is we just need to have a bearing wall for this beam B that comes across here. So we could take down this brick and all this, since demolition is going to be happening anyway, and pick up that additional 9 inches in the kitchen, which enables us to wrap those cabinets on that wall as well, like this. Now I think we've got good flow through here. This table might even still be a little bit oversized, but as I said, I don't think you're using a table. I think you're going to go to the bar, particularly considering how things got developed as I went forward. And so going forward, the first thing that happens is that door moves over to there somewhere. And there's probably an error in here somewhere because I wasn't accounting for the fact that we have a couple stairs down here. But I just threw it in there for now. And then I was also enlightened on making the trip up there to see what is happening down at the foundation level. I was surprised to see that this is a completely basemented room here, which means that could be warmed in pretty effectively and almost code compliant down the road in the future if this gets finished in better shape than what it is now. So recognizing that began to color my thinking going forward, because this becomes a really viable space for something or another besides its the kind of non-used space it is now. But you can see the red lines are the foundation walls below, and so I knew that, okay, I can bring this bearing wall back to here for beam B. And so that's what's done. It's pulled back to there. That was when I still thought that I was going to treat this ceiling situation the way I was, with the beam coming over, sitting on a wall here and bearing down through here onto that red line foundation below. So thinking in terms of bar seating, I began to build this, and I still needed to keep these cabinets far enough forward for you to reach them from inside the kitchen. And so I ended up just using that space up again like this. If it were like that, if you left it like that, seating for 3, obviously you're not just to leave this space die and not be used, so you could have some sort of a 18-inch deep full height cabinet in an alcove here for any use, whatever, and then again stretching for some more clearance through here, some more flow. Now we have seating for 3 in this sort of an arrangement here. And so a couple things here. One thing, if this isn't going to be a regular dinette situation, maybe these all become cabinets, or maybe all of these go away. But I don't think you probably want a little, I'm not sure you want this little countertop here, but again, this is really, anything can be done here within reason. So you might want to think about that. But you can look at this, and this was expanding it this far so far. In terms of how much cabinetry this adds to the kitchen, it's got to be doubling it or more. Now, I had forgot to mention it. This plan number here, it didn't really change as I was just horsing around with this, but it does begin to change once we reach certain breaking points. And in this case, it was here, I believe, yes. So you can see this number changes, so you can refer to that generally. Otherwise, it's whatever point in the film something appears that you like or don't like. But once we get this all in order like this, where we were last time, and we've expanded this space in here to 10.6 from 8.8. See what happens. We pick up almost 2 feet. I'm trying to figure out why it's not more than 2 feet, because this door itself is 2'10". Alright, I've divided that space out, some of it to the kitchen and some of it to this bar area over here. So, but in any case, once we expanded this kitchen, these windows are no longer bearing a good relationship to what's happening within the kitchen. The sink's pushed that way some, or feels pushed that way some. So I'm suggesting this. And I don't know if we just get rid of these glass block windows or if those are reinstalled. In this permutation, I just got rid of them like this. But whether or not, now that this isn't this sort of an arrangement where there's a little table here, these will have to be revisited, what you want to do there, if anything. I just shifted them all to tall cabinets. And so if this is all going to be given over to the kitchen this way, and this sort of in-kitchen seating at this peninsula, and that's all the same height as this counter here. Once that happens, this becomes the only lost area, and I know you have your shelves there right now, but I'm showing that column going away because it's not necessary. It's kind of silly anyway, you lose that space. So even if you don't put anything there, this is going to be a more usable space without that column. But for the purposes of review, if you wanted to have a little closet that closes for hanging type coats coming in from the garage, you could have that. And you can see the model changes on that as well. And that would be the final result of that, where we've redone this window more toward the center here. This door is still an error because that's got to go that way to allow for these 2 stairs down to this. I had given some consideration to raising this floor in here level with the sunroom, but I don't think there's room up in the ceiling. You need to have 7 foot coming through there. It's only 7'1" now, and it would need to come up. So now these numbers begin to change because we started arriving at some more or less completed kind of plans. So that was D dimensioned, and then adding the closet, change it to D2. There will be little minor changes, and some of them I've gone ahead and changed the model as I went along, and I'll try to follow them and see what's happening and let you know. So this was the one with the closet there, D2. And D was this completed plan without the closet. And then that's D2 without the dimensions, so you can see what you've got. Now it could be you want a closet here instead of a cabinetry type thing, particularly if this cabinets are left in place here. You don't really need any more cabinets in this kitchen. It doesn't appear. There's quite a few cabinets just in this region here without these overflow or even that one there. But in the event you still did want a door with a closet with a door on it, like a standard closet like this, I did a few little things here. This wall comes out to the maximum, allowing for a little more depth in there. It's still not standard depth. It's still only about 20 or 22 inches, but since it's all door here, it's effectively practically the depth of a standard coat closet, 24-inch finish. Now, if you keep your eye on this, depending on where you want the space, you know, I'm showing your dimensions here, but these change. If you want to squeeze this a little bit more, get a little bit more frontage on this cabinet here, or a little more clearance through here, this is the way I've done it. And you can see this door here is getting wider as well. So it's a case of how much kitchen you want and how wide you want this door, and how big you might need this space in the event this was the plan that was gone with, which I don't think it will be. You can see by losing some space here and losing some space here, we increase the clearance through here and through here. If you watch these numbers, they change from D4, from D3 to D4. Just a little more space through there, whether that's something you would want or not. So if that's 26 when it was 40, and we increase it by 3, we've gone to 43 or so, and this is down to 23. So consider what kind of furniture you're going to have there. I think you have a desk there now. Maybe that's even too wide, and we have to limit that to there, or even maybe even less than that. You can pretty much call out what this dimension is to be. That pocket door, I assume, went away. And now the next section is just kind of optional things, but things that occurred to me that at least ought to be mentioned. I mean, one of the challenges with this kitchen, one of the complaints, is that it's not out here where you can get the view. Obviously it's not getting light, enough light, even with those little adjunct windows, and I don't think I've added any glass really to speak of. I have widened these out beyond what they are now though. But the first significant difference is, remember I mentioned earlier, I don't think this refrigerator, I don't think you're going to be able to get any more space to shift that refrigerator back. I think the block, it comes right up against the back side of the plaster there. This means the refrigerator is projecting probably 5-6 inches out here, and we have pretty decent clearance here. So this, when we go to D6, what we do here, what I did here, was I increased the depth of these cabinets here, both the bases and the wall cabinets, which gives you more counter space for appliances and so forth, as well as more interior cabinet space. And it depends on who's building your cabinets too. If this is going to cost a fortune to increase the depth, then you might have to consider some other thing. But as we go from D5 to D6, you'll see this bank here comes out to create a more flush condition at the refrigerator, like this. And I've increased those to 28 deep, so I've added 4 inches to their depth, except at the range gets pulled forward that same 4 inch, and then there's a wall behind it, kind of isolating it. And you'll see this, I have a few finished photos at the end, and you'll see how that works out. But I still think these are good clearances through here. There's a little bit of a push here maybe coming around this bend. But a lot of extra cabinetry if you wanted it. And then the next was these 3 windows here. This was kind of they should have treated this differently when they built this bedroom. I guess this bedroom was added on at some later point. At least it appears that way to me. Maybe not. But it seems weird that those windows are pushed over to the corner, and since we're needing and wanting more light in here, maybe those 2 more are added, or maybe the entire unit is replaced, something like this, and that's just a wall of glass. It's easy because you just take all the brick out of the road, and that's the end of it. And whether it's a big fixed glass in the middle with a couple casements, or whether I kind of prefer the 5 window look. But it's obviously an error out here, and you can see you just take all this brick out, put a new header in up in here, and then this is all glass here. This area here could probably be improved upon down the road, particularly if this room ends up getting finished at some later project. That was just an adjunct thing, and one other adjunct thing is, again, in terms of light, getting particularly east light, and you have this north exposure here, which you'll not get any serious heat gain from that. So the way the roof planes are set up, it would be easy enough. I don't know what that rafter spacing, I thought it was 24. If it is, it's even easier to drop a few skylights into this den here. Bring some of that nice even north light all day long into this. So this was D7, and this was about, I've reached the end of what I could do with this, depending on what you did here. That was about the end of this particular kitchen plan. And that's an elevation of that whole thing from the family room through to the den here. It was at this point, though, when I reached that final bit there, what else might be done. And obviously the next thing is to get a little more seating in here, at least one more. And it was at that point I discovered that I don't even need to leave any of these walls in here at all. Particularly now, we can do a little different kind of a support where we just have a couple LVLs running this way, as tall as the ceiling joist, the existing ceiling joist, and those can be located anywhere in this region as long as they're going to clear the roof framing that comes down. I'm showing them here where they will, and that shortens this beam, which means it can be reduced also to 7.5 inches high, 7.25 inches high. They're all LVLs, but it does flatten that entire ceiling and get rid of these walls here, any need for any kind of a bearing point coming down to that foundation there. So, and you can see here it is working. I don't know if you can, I'm sure the builder understands this, but this is that beam B, the two 7-inch LVLs, the little short 2x4s across that former area, and the original ceiling joist suspended at that beam with the roof rafters coming down on top of those, like happens over here. You can see that it clears the roof plane. Whether or not you have to chow out a little bit of this piece remains to be seen. But once we do that, then we can get rid of that entirely, and that's really a much nicer arrangement, I think, anyway. And then we accomplish seating for 4 within the kitchen. I don't know whether these stay here. Again, I continue to revisit those in my mind. And this door still is an error. Oh, there it is. And I put in these semblance of these doors that you have on that sunroom porch. I also, because there was this area here and I wasn't sure what that was going to be used for, not that it couldn't just be art, but if you did want, a little bench and maybe some hooks above it, that is also a possibility. Now, I think this is a pretty decent kitchen for the size of this house. I like how it works. I like how it's close to this family room and interfaces with it. I'm not minding the stairs having been moved, because now they are introducing down into that finished space below. And I like that we've preserved this sunroom for whatever might happen down the road. Now that this is also kind of gracious through here, I can imagine this becoming a very nice little kind of hangout room, still with glass all the way around it, but something that's a little, maybe it's used a little bit more. And if that happens, because I mentioned earlier, I think this could be warmed in entirely, really this can be just openings through here to, this actual space out here where people are, you have your furniture and so forth, and these are just openings instead of glass because you've warmed this room in. But that's time for a different project, and for now, unless that's all going to happen at once, these would have to be windows. And so of this particular kitchen then, I've taken a few shots just to give you a feel for the thing, and these finishes are probably wrong, they're just kind of neutral finishes, but it will give you a feel for the space and the area with that wall taken down. I have glass in this cabinet, glass doors in this last cabinet here, so those two kind of match up over the windows. And this is, so that's coming in from the dining room, and this is coming in from the rear mudroom area. And I didn't mention, whether or not you want water over there's a pot filler at the range. Still showing these big cabinets here, whether those happen or not, it's up to you. And then coming in from the den, and obviously I don't have anything done, finished in that room there, but this is coming in from the den. Okay, but if this is not enough kitchen, I thought it was at least prudent to double check on whether or not you could expand out here and how that would all work out, how it would impact everything. And frankly, I'm unimpressed, it's not what I would recommend be done. If this is enough kitchen for you and your family, I would run with something like this, particularly with getting those walls out. All that other stuff was kind of immaterial, including the table over here, etc. This is probably what we were looking for in the first place. But I did want to make a review of that because I said I would. So if that was not enough kitchen, then we come to this, and we can open these walls up to an extent. Sadly, we need to have this stub wall needs to come over here because at this point the beam begins to want to come through the roof over it. So that's the widest, about the widest opening we can get between these two spaces. You can see the new stairs are shown here, or some close to the new stairs are shown here, and then here is if those would go away and that would stay as it is, presumably in the event we went this way. The stairs are put back in place with open railings, and I've rotated them around because of considerations with that basement, where we don't, you want to be able to come down the stairs and come into this finished area. Whether this bedroom door would have another door here, as I said, I don't think you're going to build this, but nevertheless, you would have to create some sort of, I presume, some sort of finished pathway into this finished area here. Whereas the stairs, as we've relocated them here, they come right down into this finished area. I don't know if it's, if it's too far or whatever. I think these are about 6 of one and half dozen of another, frankly. But I'm going to cut short this film editing for now, send over what I have put together so far, and finish the rest and get that over to you. There's a number of considerations I think are worth thinking about. I mean, and for that matter, it's only now just occurred to me now that if something were indeed worked out over here that was more to your preference than what we've already covered with keeping it here, there's nothing that stops a person from having these stairs at both locations, particularly considering that I, anyway, have not identified a place in the floor plan for a laundry facility on this floor. So these stairs can be both of them here, so that's going to be another important consideration with regard to whether you use this kitchen up here or like this. But I will cut short this film right now, and you can look at that, and the other one should be over within a couple more hours.